When you close your eyes at night, in that final moment before sleep claims you, there exists a threshold between conscious control and unconscious truth. And the space surrounding you in those vulnerable hours speaks a language most people never learn to hear. But your bedroom, the sanctuary where you're most exposed, most defenseless, most authentically yourself, without performance or pretense, this intimate space reveals psychological truths you might spend years in therapy trying to uncover. Your sleeping environment isn't just about comfort or aesthetics or following some designer's vision of what belongs in a private space. It's a direct manifestation of your deepest psychological architecture. The bedroom that makes you feel truly safe, that allows you to surrender completely into rest, that feels like it's holding the most fragile parts of your being, contains encrypted messages about your relationship with vulnerability, your unconscious fears, your hidden longings, and the aspects of yourself you only allowed to exist in darkness. The bedroom you're drawn to, that space that makes something inside you whisper, "Yes, this is where I could finally let my guard down completely." This room holds keys to understanding patterns that shape your entire existence, yet remain invisible in daylight hours. Your unconscious mind has already chosen before we begin the analysis. It recognized itself in one of these spaces before your rational mind could construct explanations. Before we journey into these hidden territories, I need you to do something crucial. As I describe 4 radically different bedroom environments, don't think about what's trendy, what your partner might prefer, what guests would think, or what photographs well on social media. Instead, notice which description creates a physical response in your chest, which one makes your breathing deepen, which one touches something you've never spoken aloud. Your body knows. Trust that knowing. And if you're ready to explore the shadow territories of your psyche that determine everything about how you move through life, hit that subscribe button right now, because this channel goes where most psychology content fears to tread, and what's coming next will fundamentally alter how you understand your relationship with rest, vulnerability, and the parts of yourself that only exist when nobody's watching. Some speak of fortress-like protection. Others embrace sensory dissolution. Some create womb-like containment. Others celebrate exposure. The space that called to you isn't about thread count or furniture style. Something deeper recognized itself before analysis could interfere. Now I'm about to reveal truths that will transform how you understand your most intimate relationship, the one with your own unconscious mind. But first, let's explore what it means if the first bedroom captured your attention. If you felt drawn to the fortress bedroom, that space with heavy blackout curtains blocking every trace of external light, thick walls creating complete sound isolation, a substantial bed with a solid headboard anchoring the room, minimal access points, a door that locks with satisfying weight, Cool temperatures, neutral colors providing no stimulation, nothing unnecessary, nothing vulnerable. Then your psyche is currently in a state of psychological self-protection, managing threats most people never consciously recognize. This bedroom belongs to people who experience the world as fundamentally unsafe, not in paranoid delusion, but in accurate recognition of how much energy it requires to maintain boundaries, navigate social complexity, protect your energy from constant demands on your attention, your emotion, your presence in a world that believes it has unlimited access to you at all times. Your nervous system operates in a state of heightened vigilance throughout your waking hours, detecting threats, assessing social dynamics, reading subtle cues in tone, body language, energy shifts that signal danger or dishonesty or manipulation. This isn't dysfunction, this is enhanced perception that kept your ancestors alive, but exhausts you in modern environments where threats are psychological rather than physical, continuous rather than episodic. The fortress bedroom isn't about fear, it's about necessary recovery. Creating conditions where your nervous system can finally stand down, where you don't have to monitor anything, where external stimulation cannot penetrate, where you're protected by physical barriers substantial enough that your body believes the protection and permits you to actually rest. When you enter this space, something fundamental shifts. The hypervigilance that's been running in background since you woke releases its grip. Your shoulders drop, your jaw unclenches, your breathing deepens into your belly instead of staying shallow in your chest. For the first time all day, you're not scanning for threats, not managing other people's emotions, not protecting your boundaries because the physical space does that work for you. You possess what depth psychology recognizes as a highly sensitive shadow, the part of your psyche that absorbed early experiences of boundary violation, of unsafe environments, of having to be alert because protection wasn't guaranteed. This isn't damage, this is adaptation. And it's made you extraordinarily perceptive, capable of navigating complexity with precision. But it's also left you with a nervous system that struggles to fully disengage. People often misunderstand your need for this level of insulation. They think you're antisocial, depressed, afraid of intimacy, or pushing them away, but they're completely wrong. You're not isolating, you're recovering. You're not avoiding connection, you're creating the conditions that make genuine connection possible by ensuring you have a sanctuary where you can return to yourself completely. The thick walls and sound isolation reflect your need for energetic boundaries, not just physical ones. You absorb other people's emotions, their anxieties, their unspoken tensions, their conflicts, their chaos, and you don't always realize you're doing it until you're alone and suddenly feeling emotions that aren't even yours, processing dynamics that have nothing to do with you, carrying weight that was never your responsibility. Your relationship with this bedroom mirrors your relationship with your own vulnerability. You've learned the hard way that being open, being soft, being undefended leaves you exposed to people who don't have your best interests at heart. So you protect yourself carefully. You choose who gets access. You create layers of security. You only reveal the tender parts to those who've proven themselves trustworthy. The substantial bed with solid headboard speaks to your need for grounding, for weight, for something solid at your back. You can't sleep feeling untethered or exposed or vulnerable. You need to feel held by something stronger than yourself, anchored to something that won't shift beneath you. Sometimes you feel guilty about needing this much protection when others seem fine with open doors, unlocked windows, street noise filtering in, ambient light. You wonder if you're broken, if you're too sensitive, if something's wrong with your inability to just relax like normal people. But there's nothing wrong. You simply require specific conditions for your nervous system to fully release its vigilance. Now, there's something profound about this preference that connects to a pattern in your waking life that's been draining you without your full awareness. But before I reveal that critical connection, make sure you're subscribed because we're going much deeper into shadow territory, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. The insights ahead will explain why you felt so exhausted lately, despite sleeping enough hours. The fortress bedroom appears in your life during phases of psychological threat, when your boundaries have been violated, when you've given too much, when you've been exposed to people or environments that proved unsafe, when your system needs to retreat completely and rebuild defenses that were compromised. Right now, you're not just creating a safe bedroom, you're creating a safe life. Removing toxic people from your inner circle, eliminating obligations that drain more than they nourish, establishing firm boundaries where you previously had porous ones, learning that protecting your energy isn't selfishness, it's survival wisdom. Recognizing which environments deplete you and having the courage to avoid them. You're discovering that rest isn't just about sleep duration, it's about depth of surrender. And you can only surrender when you feel genuinely protected, when threat has been eliminated, when your nervous system receives the signal that standing down is safe, that nothing will breach your defenses while you're vulnerable. The message of this bedroom is both validating and revolutionary. You don't need to adapt yourself to sleeping conditions that keep your nervous system activated. You need to create conditions that honor your actual security requirements, your actual nervous system, your actual need for protected space. And there's no shame in requiring fortification that others don't need. Their nervous system isn't yours. If the Dissolution bedroom captured something in you, that space where boundaries between self and surroundings seem to evaporate, sheer flowing fabrics that move with invisible air currents, soft diffused lighting that seems to emanate from everywhere and nowhere, colors that blend into each other without hard edges, the sensation of floating, of weightlessness, of being held by something softer than physical matter, ambient sounds of water or distant music, the feeling that the room is breathing, then your psyche is seeking release from the rigid structures of identity that exhaust you during waking hours. This room is never chosen by people who find comfort in solid definitions, clear categories, fixed identities. It belongs to those who experience the boundaries of self as both necessary and constraining, who feel confined by the daily requirement to be a consistent, coherent, singular person, when internal reality is fluid, multiple, contradictory, constantly shifting. Your inner world doesn't follow logical rules or maintain consistent positions. You contain multitudes that don't always agree with each other. You're different people in different contexts, and the exhausting part isn't the multiplicity. It's the social demand that you pretend to be one unified, unchanging self that makes sense to observers who need you to be predictable. Walking into your psyche would feel like walking into this bedroom. No hard edges, nowhere that one thing definitively ends and another begins, everything flowing into everything else, meaning emerging from juxtaposition rather than definition. Beauty found in transition states rather than fixed forms. People drawn to dissolution spaces possess what we might call high ego permeability. That quality of having thin boundaries between self and other, between conscious and unconscious, between different aspects of identity. You don't experience yourself as a fortress with clear walls. You experience yourself as more like water, taking the shape of whatever container currently holds you, while remaining essentially yourself. This isn't weakness or lack of identity. It's a different psychological structure, one that offers tremendous advantages in empathy, creativity, spiritual experience, and understanding of human complexity. But it also means you're vulnerable to losing yourself in others' needs, expectations, definitions of who you are. The flowing fabrics in this space mirror your need for movement, for refusal to be pinned down, for the ability to shift and change and become something different than you were yesterday. You can't tolerate being locked into definitions that no longer fit, being held to promises made by previous versions of yourself, being expected to remain consistent when everything inside you is constantly evolving. The soft, diffused lighting speaks to your relationship with clarity. You don't actually want everything harshly illuminated, definitively known, completely understood. You're comfortable with mystery, with ambiguity, with questions that don't have singular answers. The people who demand everything be clear and defined and categorized exhaust you, because they're trying to make reality simpler than it actually is. The sensation of floating reflects your complicated relationship with groundedness. Part of you craves it, needs it, knows you can't function without some anchor to physical reality, but another part fears it, because being grounded means being contained, being defined, being limited to one way of being, and something in you resists that limitation with everything you have. Now, there's something crucial about this bedroom choice that reveals exactly what's happening in your psychological development right now. But I'm going to share that in just a moment. And if this exploration is touching something you've never heard articulated before, hit that like button. It helps this content reach others who desperately need to understand they're not broken for experiencing reality differently. Your relationship with this bedroom also reveals your relationship with consciousness itself. You don't want to be fully awake, alert, analyzing everything with rational mind during sleep. You want ego dissolution. You want to stop being a separate self with all its responsibilities and defenses and just merge with something larger than individual identity. The ambient sounds, water, distant music, sounds with no clear source, reflect your need for input that doesn't demand anything from you, that just exists, that you can drift in and out of awareness of without having to respond or analyze or make meaning. You're so tired of everything requiring something from you. But this permeability has shadow aspects. Sometimes you lose yourself so completely in others that you can't remember what you actually want. Sometimes you avoid necessary boundaries because boundaries feel like violence against your fluid nature. Sometimes you use your multiplicity as excuse to avoid commitment because committing means choosing one path and eliminating others. If this bedroom spoke to you first, you're in a phase of necessary dissolution right now. Some identity you've been carrying, some role you've been performing, some version of yourself you presented to the world is ready to dissolve, and you're allowing it to happen, instead of clinging desperately to who you used to be. You're learning that death and birth are the same process, that you can't become something new without releasing something old, that the discomfort of not knowing who you are right now is actually the space where transformation happens, that dissolution isn't disintegration, it's reorganization at a level deeper than conscious control. The message of this space is both terrifying and liberating. Your fluidity isn't instability. Your permeability isn't weakness. Your refusal to be one consistent thing isn't confusion. You're honoring the truth that self is not fixed, and trying to make it fixed only creates rigidity that eventually shatters. You're choosing flow. If the womb bedroom called to something primal in you, that space of complete enclosure where walls curve inward rather than standing vertical, deep, saturated colors, particularly reds, burgundies, deep purples, colors of blood and depth and interior body spaces, low ceilings creating compression rather than expansion, heavy layered textiles covering every surface, thick carpet that silences footsteps, the feeling of being inside something rather than simply contained by walls, of being held the way you were held before birth, then your psyche is calling you back to a state of original safety, to the time before separation, before you had to be a defended separate self navigating hostile territory alone. This bedroom represents a return to the maternal, the original container, the first space that held you without condition, the darkness that was safety rather than threat, the compression that was comfort rather than confinement. It speaks to a part of you that never fully completed the separation process or completed it too early under conditions that weren't safe, and some part of you has been searching for that original holding ever since. You experience the world as fundamentally cold, as requiring constant effort, as punishing vulnerability, as offering no unconditional support. And you're exhausted from having to be your own mother, your own father, your own support system, your own everything, while some part of you that never got to be truly dependent, truly held, truly allowed to just exist without earning it, is still waiting for someone or something to finally provide what was missing. People drawn to womb spaces often carry early abandonment wounds, not necessarily because they were literally abandoned, but because the holding environment failed them in crucial moments. They had to become independent before they were ready. They learned the world doesn't catch you when you fall, so you better not fall. They developed strong, capable, functional exteriors, while interiors remained underdeveloped, still at the developmental stage where they needed things they'll never receive. The curved walls that seem to embrace rather than simply enclose mirror your need for active holding. You don't want neutral space. You want space that responds, that meets you, that wraps around you, that communicates through its very structure that you're safe here, you're wanted here, you belong here. The deep, saturated colors, especially reds and purples, speak to your need to return to body, to interiority, to the blood knowledge that exists beneath rational thought. You're tired of living entirely in your head, in abstract concepts, in the bright, harsh world of consciousness. You want to sink back into body, into intuition, into the dark, feminine wisdom that Western culture has tried to eliminate. The low ceilings creating compression reflect something most people won't understand. You don't actually want expansion right now. You want containment. You want to be small. You want to curl into fetal position. You want to stop being the capable adult everyone depends on and just be held, without having to reciprocate, without having to give anything back, without having to be anything other than a creature that needs. Before we continue, I want to share something about this need that will help you understand why it intensifies during certain life phases. But first, if this content is illuminating patterns you've never seen clearly, turn on that notification bell so you never miss an exploration. because what's coming in future videos will go even deeper into the territories that shape your unconscious life. Your relationship with this space also reveals your relationship with dependency. You've been taught that needing others is weakness, that asking for help is failure, that being self-sufficient is the ultimate goal. But something inside you rebels against that, knowing it's not natural, not healthy, not how humans actually work. We're meant to be held, to be interdependent, to have our needs met by community, by connection, by something larger than isolated individualism. The heavy layered textiles covering every surface speak to your need for softness, for padding between you and the hard edges of reality. You're raw right now, easily wounded by things that wouldn't bother you during more defended phases. You need cushioning, need buffering, need something soft between you and the world's sharp corners. The silence created by thick carpet, by sound-absorbing fabrics, by materials that refuse to echo, reflects your need for internal quiet. You've been carrying too much noise, too many voices, too many demands, too many messages about who you should be, what you should want, how you should live, and you need it all to stop. Need to return to the silence beneath language, where you still know who you are. But this regression has purpose. You're not escaping, you're returning to retrieve something you left behind. You're going back to the developmental stage where you didn't get what you needed, and you're attempting to give it to yourself now, to reparent, to provide the holding that was absent, to create conditions where the frozen, abandoned parts can thaw and complete their interrupted development. Sometimes people tell you this is unhealthy, that you're regressing, that you need to move forward, not backward. But they don't understand that sometimes the only way forward is backward, that you can't build adult structure on foundation that was never properly laid, that healing requires returning to the wound, not just covering it with capability and moving on. If this bedroom captured you, you're in a phase of deep psychological repair right now. You're not avoiding life. You're creating conditions for healing that can't happen while you're still performing, still managing, still being strong for everyone else. You need to collapse, need to be held, need to stop, and you're finally giving yourself permission. The message of this bedroom is both regressive and profoundly healing. Your need to return to womb-like containment isn't pathology. Your desire to be held without having to hold others isn't selfishness. Your exhaustion with being separate and defended and adult isn't weakness. You're acknowledging that humans need holding throughout life, not just in infancy, and you're refusing to participate in a culture that shames that need. If the exposed bedroom seized your attention, that space with floor-to-ceiling windows, offering your sleeping form to the night sky, minimal covering, sheer curtains at most, or nothing at all, sleeping platform low to ground, or even directly on floor, open to elements, to temperature shifts, to sounds of outside world, to the gaze of moon and stars, to the possibility that something or someone could see you in your most vulnerable state. Minimal barriers between your unconscious self and the vast unknown, then you're living at the edge of a profound psychological transformation, one that requires you to fundamentally alter your relationship with vulnerability itself. This room is never chosen by people who feel safe. It's chosen by people who've decided that safety, as the world defines it, is a prison, that protection has become isolation, that defending themselves has cost them the very experiences that make life worth living. They're ready to risk. They're ready to be seen. They're ready to stop hiding, even if exposure brings pain. Your psyche isn't seeking comfort right now. It's seeking aliveness, and you've recognized that aliveness requires vulnerability, requires putting yourself in positions where you can't control outcomes, can't manage others' perceptions, can't retreat into defended safety. You're choosing rawness over numbness, exposure over protection, truth over comfort. People drawn to exposed sleeping spaces possess what we might call high psychological courage. Not the absence of fear, but the willingness to feel fear and choose vulnerability anyway. They've reached a point where continued self-protection feels like death, where walls that once provided security now feel like tomb, where safety has become stagnation. The floor-to-ceiling windows, offering your sleeping form to night sky, mirror your readiness to be witnessed, not performing, not curated, not in control, but actually vulnerable, actually imperfect, actually human. You're done with the exhausting work of image management. You're ready to be seen as you actually are and accept the consequences. The minimal covering or complete absence of curtains speaks to your relationship with shame. You're confronting it directly. You're asking what's actually so terrible about being seen, about having needs, about being imperfect, about all the things you spent your life hiding. And you're discovering that shame loses power when you stop feeding it with concealment. The low sleeping platform or floor-level bed reflects your need to be grounded, to return to earth, to stop existing primarily in abstract thought or defended heights. You want to feel the weight of your body, want to remember your animal, want to stop transcending everything and actually inhabit your physical existence. The openness to elements, to temperature shifts, to external sounds, reveals your desire to stop being so controlled, so regulated, so maintained at constant, comfortable parameters. You want to feel things, want to be affected, want to allow the world to touch you instead of keeping it at controlled distance. Now, there's something about this choice that explains exactly what shift is happening in your psychological structure right now. And stay with me, because this will illuminate why everything has felt so different lately, why you're making choices that confuse people who knew the previous version of you. And if this exploration is articulating something you've been feeling but couldn't name, make sure you're subscribed, because we explore these edge territories regularly, diving into the psychological transformations that change everything about how you relate to yourself and the world. Your relationship with this bedroom also reveals your relationship with control. You're loosening your grip. You're acknowledging that the illusion of control was costing you more than the anxiety of uncertainty. You're learning to tolerate not knowing, not managing, not defending, and discovering there's strange freedom in that surrender. The possibility that something or someone could see you in vulnerable sleep speaks to your readiness for genuine intimacy, not the performed version, not the carefully managed version, but the kind that requires you show up undefended and trust that you won't be destroyed by being truly known. But this exposure has real risks. Sometimes you confuse recklessness with courage. Sometimes you push yourself into vulnerability before you've developed the internal resources to metabolize what happens. Sometimes your rebellion against safety becomes its own kind of prison, where you can't admit when you actually need protection. The exposed bedroom also reveals your relationship with the transpersonal, with forces larger than ego, with the cosmos that existed before you and will continue after you. The night sky, witnessing your sleep, reminds you that your defended, separate self is temporary, that you're part of something vast, that your boundaries are more permeable than you pretend. If this space called to you, you're in a phase of radical opening right now. Some defense that's been protecting you your entire life is dissolving, not because it's being torn down, but because you're choosing to release it. Choosing to find out what happens when you stop hiding, when you allow yourself to be affected, when you participate in life instead of observing it from defended distance. You're learning that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the only path to genuine connection, to creative expression, to spiritual experience, to feeling alive instead of just safe. That every meaningful experience requires you risk something that matters, that you can't control outcomes, and trying to is what's been making you feel so dead inside. Each of these 4 bedrooms reveals far more than sleeping preferences. They're psychological portraits, showing how your unconscious relates to vulnerability, to rest, to the parts of yourself that only exist in darkness, to the fundamental question of whether you're safe in this world. Some are drawn to fortress protection because their nervous systems operate in justified vigilance and need conditions where threat is eliminated. Some choose dissolution because their fluid nature can't tolerate the rigidity required during waking hours. Some follow the womb call because they're doing deep repair work that requires return to original holding. And some choose exposure because they're ready to stop hiding and risk being truly alive, truly seen, truly affected by existence. Your choice wasn't random. Your unconscious recognized something in one of these spaces, something about where you are right now, what you need, what's trying to emerge, what aspect of your relationship with vulnerability requires attention. It showed you before thinking could interfere, before defense could redirect, before you could choose what seems safest or most acceptable. And here's what most people miss completely about bedroom preferences. They're not permanent. You're not locked into one relationship with vulnerability forever. You're evolving, constantly changing. Today you might need fortress protection. Next year, dissolution. Later, return to womb. Eventually, readiness for exposure. You're a process, and your sleeping environment should honor whatever phase you're navigating. Sometimes the bedroom reveals something you've been ignoring. Your need for better boundaries, your exhaustion with rigid identity, your requirement for deep repair work, your readiness for transformation through vulnerability. Other times it confirms something you knew but haven't fully honored, the thing you've been trying to talk yourself out of, the need you've been taught to be ashamed of.
And remember this essential truth. You're not creating bedrooms to impress anyone, to follow design trends, to maintain resale value. You're creating the conditions that allow your unconscious the space it needs to do the deep work that only happens when ego releases control, when defenses stand down, when you finally stop performing and just exist. This is sacred work. This is self-knowledge made physical. This is your unconscious speaking through space, showing you exactly what it needs you to understand right now. Now, here's what I want you to do next. The power of this exploration isn't to categorize you or limit your complexity. It's to help you hear yourself more clearly, beneath all the noise, beneath all the shoulds, beneath all the voices telling you what healthy or normal or acceptable looks like. Your bedroom preference is a direct message from your unconscious, from the part of you that knows what you need better than any expert, any trend, any well-meaning person who doesn't live inside your psyche. Listen to it, trust it, honor it, even if it doesn't make logical sense, even if others don't understand, even if it contradicts everything you thought you knew about yourself. You don't need to redesign your entire bedroom tomorrow, but you can take one step toward greater alignment. Add blackout curtains if you need fortress protection. Introduce flowing fabrics if you need dissolution. Bring in deeper colors and lower light if you need womb holding. Remove a curtain if you're ready for exposure. That's enough. Transformation begins with small acts of honoring what's true.
Before you go, I need you to do something important. Comment below which bedroom chose you. Not for algorithm, not for me, but for yourself, and for the others who desperately need to see they're not alone in their needs, in their relationship with vulnerability, in their requirements for rest. There's tremendous power in claiming your truth publicly, even anonymously, even in small ways like this. It breaks the spell of isolation. If this journey into your psychological underworld resonated, subscribe immediately, because we're exploring these shadow territories regularly, diving into the unconscious patterns shaping your entire existence, revealing truths that conventional psychology won't touch. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Share this with someone who's struggling with sleep, who says their bedroom doesn't feel right, who can't explain why they can't rest in spaces that should be comfortable. Sometimes the answer isn't about better mattresses or sleep hygiene. It's about understanding your actual psychological needs around vulnerability and creating environments that honor them. Your bedroom has spoken. Now comes the deeper work of listening, of trusting, of having the courage to create the conditions your unconscious is asking for, even when logic doesn't understand, even when others question, even when it means admitting needs you've spent your life trying to transcend. You're not broken for needing what you need. You're awake, and that changes everything.